If you're the person everyone describes as kind, and you're also the person you speak to worse than you'd speak to anybody alive, this one is about you. Because that's the strange arrangement, isn't it? You are kind to everyone and cruel to exactly one person. And you've probably decided that the second part is just honesty. That you're not being hard on yourself, you're being accurate. By the end of this, you'll know why that is an accuracy and why the kindness and the cruelty aren't two separate traits at all. They're one mechanism, pointed in two directions. Here's the moment it's easiest to see. A friend tells you they messed something up, missed a deadline, said the wrong thing, let someone down, and you say the true thing, that they were exhausted, that anyone would have, that it isn't the whole picture of who they are, and you mean it. You're not performing. You can see their situation clearly, and the clear view genuinely includes mercy. Then, some hours later, you're lying there running your own version, the same class of mistake, and not one sentence you offered them shows up. Not one. It isn't that you consider mercy and reject it. It never appears as an option. The file on you gets read by somebody else entirely. So let's look at why. Because there is a real mechanism here, and it isn't a character flaw. Start with what you actually know about other people. You know what they did. You see their behavior, you hear their explanation, and that's the case file. It's thin, and because it's thin, you fill the gaps generously. You assume they were tired, you assume they meant well, you assume there was a reason. That's not naivety. That's the correct way to read incomplete evidence about a person you like. Now look at what you know about yourself. You know what you did. You also know what you almost did. You know the version you considered and didn't say. You know the flash of resentment you had before you were generous. You know that when you helped, part of you didn't want to. You know the whole thing, every draft, not just the sent version, and you put all of it into evidence. So notice what's actually happening. You're not applying a lower standard to other people. You're applying the same standard to wildly different amounts of information. Everyone else gets judged on the visible part. You get judged on the complete file. Behavior, intention, and every thought you had the decency not to act on. Of course, you come out worse. You're the only person on earth being audited completely, and you call that being fair. There's a second piece, and it's the one that explains why the kindness is real and not a strategy. You're not kind because you're afraid of people. You're kind because you have unusually high resolution on what being hurt feels like. You know the specific texture of being dismissed, of being the last to be told, of being tolerated rather than wanted. You know it in detail. And because you know it in detail, you're very good at not doing it to anyone. You can see the small version of it coming 3 moves ahead. That's a real ability. It makes you the person people come to. But it's an instrument, and an instrument doesn't choose its direction. The same fine-grained sense of what wounds a person is available for use on you. And on you, it has perfect access. No guessing, no reading between the lines, direct entry. So the thing that makes you gentle with everyone is the exact same thing that makes you precise about your own faults. Not 2 traits, 1 tool, 2 directions. Here's something worth noticing about your anger, because you almost certainly believe you don't have much of it. You rarely get angry at people. Someone cancels on you an hour before and you find yourself managing their embarrassment about it. Someone takes credit for something you did, and within a minute you've constructed a version where it wasn't really yours anyway. The anger doesn't arrive, or rather, it arrives, and it's gone so fast you don't get a good look at it. But it doesn't evaporate. Anger has to be aimed at somebody, and there's exactly one target where aiming it costs you nothing socially. You. Nobody leaves, nobody gets upset. Nobody has to be confronted. So it goes inward, where it's safe, and it comes out as the thing you call standards. That heat in your chest at 2 in the morning about something you said at a party, that's not self-improvement. That's anger that couldn't find a legal address. Which brings us to the voice itself, and I want you to try something. Next time the verdict arrives, the one that says you're too much or not enough, or that people are only being polite, listen to the wording, not the meaning. The wording. Because it's usually not yours. It has a rhythm you didn't invent. Sometimes it's a specific phrase, word for word, that you would never use about anyone else. And if you follow it back, quite often you can hear whose voice it originally was. A parent, a teacher, someone whose approval mattered when you were small and had no way of checking whether they were right. Now, the important part isn't that you were criticized. Almost everyone was. The important part is what you did with it. You installed it, not out of weakness, because it worked. Think about what a critical voice actually does for a child. If you can find the fault before the adult finds it, you get a small amount of control back. If you've already told yourself you're stupid, hearing it from them costs less. Being ahead of the judgment takes the sting out of it. So the voice isn't your enemy. It started as your early warning system, and it did its job. The trouble is that it never got told the emergency ended. It's still scanning, still reporting, still assuming that someone is about to find you out. Decades after the person it was protecting you from left the building. There's one more place this shows up, and it's the one that costs you most in actual life. Watch what happens when somebody genuinely treats you badly. Not ambiguously, clearly. Within a few minutes, you'll be looking for your own contribution, what you might have implied, how you could have said it better, whether you were owed the thing you thought you were owed. You will find something, because if you look hard enough at any interaction, you can always find your own fingerprints on it. And here's why you do that, because it isn't weakness. If it's your fault, it's controllable. If it's their fault, you're just someone who can be treated like that and has no say in it. Given the choice between being at fault and being powerless, almost everyone takes the fault. It's the version where you still have a steering wheel. So you take the blame not because you're humble, but because it's the less frightening of two explanations. And here's the accounting problem that keeps the whole thing running. You keep a record, not of the good things, of the failures. And it's completely one-sided. Think about how much kindness you've handed out this month. Small things. The message you sent when you were tired, the thing you didn't say when you had every right to, the time you rearranged your day so someone else's would work. Can you list 5? Most people can't. It doesn't get recorded. Now think about the last time you were short with someone, or forgot to reply, or weren't there when you said you'd be. You can probably date it. You might be able to quote yourself. Same person, same month, 2 completely different filing systems. One type of event gets written down permanently, the other evaporates on contact. And then you look at your own ledger and conclude, reasonably, based on the evidence in front of you, that you're not a very good person after all. You're not reading yourself wrongly. You're reading a rigged record. And there's a matching mechanism on the other side of the ledger, which is why nothing ever gets written into the credit column. Watch what happens the next time somebody compliments you. Not a big thing. Someone says you handled something well, or that they're glad you're around. Time how long it takes before you've disposed of it. Usually under 2 seconds. It was nothing. Anyone would have. They're just being nice. You had help. You have a fully built, fast-acting defense system against good information about yourself. And notice you don't have one for bad information. That goes in unfiltered, gets time-stamped, and filed. So the asymmetry isn't only in what you record. It's in what you're willing to let through the door at all. You are running a court where the prosecution never has to prove anything and the defense isn't allowed to speak. There's a cost to all this that the people who love you feel and can't name, and I think it's worth saying out loud. You become impossible to help, because comfort needs something to land on. When a friend is struggling, they show you the struggle, and that's what lets you be useful to them. You don't do that. You arrive already processed, the problem summarized, the blame assigned to yourself, the conclusion reached before anyone else got a vote. So people who care about you are left holding something they can't give you, and slowly they stop trying, and you read that as confirmation that you were right to keep it to yourself. Which means the arrangement isn't just painful, it's self-sealing. So what do you actually do with this? Not be kinder to yourself. That instruction has never once worked, and I think it's because it sounds like a request to lower the standard, and you don't want to become someone worse. Here's a different move, and it's small enough to actually use. When the verdict arrives, don't argue with it. Just ask one question. Would I say this sentence out loud, in those words, to somebody I like who had done exactly the same thing? Not would I be nice to them. Would I say this specific sentence? The answer is almost always no. You wouldn't say it because it isn't true enough to say to someone whose face you'd have to watch while you said it. And that tells you what you're dealing with. A standard survives being spoken out loud. A habit doesn't. You'll notice this doesn't require you to think well of yourself, which is the part people can't manage on demand. It only requires consistency. The same sentence, the same evidence, for everyone. That's a much easier thing to hold on to at 2 in the morning. And one honest note before I finish. If that voice is constant rather than occasional, if it's cruel in a way that scares you, or if it started making the case that people would be better off without you, that's not a personality trait to manage on your own. There are people whose whole job is untangling exactly that, and going to them isn't an admission of anything. If any of this landed, there are 3 of these a week. One mechanism at a time, explain the way it actually works. That's the whole channel, because you were never too hard on yourself out of arrogance and never kind to everyone out of weakness. You just happen to be the only person whose whole file you can read, and you've been sentencing yourself on evidence you'd never let anyone else be judged on.